Hi, I'm Randy Phillips, and this is Backstage with Randy Phillips. I'm excited to have as my guest today Jonathan Saenz. Hello, Jonathan.
Good to see you, Randy. This is a treat.
Well, it's a treat for me. I've been wanting to do this for a while with you. You're a busy man.
I get around to quite a few places. I try to stay in Texas as much as I can.
Oh, everybody should do that.
Yes, and I'm not, ashamed to say that. Fifth generation Texan. But every now and then I will sneak away to D.C. I don't run away. I just sneak away, but for some work, sometimes family, but oftentimes a little bit of law and policy.
Love your tie.
Thank you. I'm proud Longhorn, and there are other great universities out there, but they don't have my heart. So
no, there's only one University of Texas. Hook 'em. You're a married man.
I am not. I do have kids, though.
Okay.
Yes.
How many kids you have?
I have 3 kids.
What are their ages?
They're 19, 17, and 15. I have one that's the other one's about to turn 18. But yeah,
goodness.
They're about 2 years apart each, and so
that age will be on your knees a lot.
Yes,
praying.
Yeah, no, 3 teenagers, one in college, but 2. I've got one that just started is in his senior year this year. I've already been down that road once, so I kind of have some experience. The senior year of high school.
That's a tough one. But it's emotional, isn't it? When you start thinking of them.
Exactly. The first one I felt like snuck up on me more.
Yeah.
But the second one is more of he's like, I got it, Dad. I'm like, oh, I'm right here if you need me. So
that third one though hurts.
My daughter is the youngest. That one's gonna be
that hurts.
Randy, she's already preparing me. The other day at dinner, she was like, Dad, like pretty soon I'm going to be leaving the house too.
No, you're not. You're not going anywhere.
That's right. We shall see.
I'm going wherever you're going. I'm going.
We shall see. So,
Texas values.
Yes, sir.
What's Texas values?
Yes. Well, we like to say faith, family, and freedom.
Okay.
And I mentioned, when we started Fifth Generation Texan, it is a tagline for our organization, the nonprofit law and policy Christian organization that I lead. But it's also a way to remind people of the values of our state that have been there since the beginning. We believe that those principles have been there all along. If you look at the letter that was written by Travis at the Alamo when it was falling, he talked about some of these principles of faith, family, and freedom. So our organization is a Judeo-Christian organization. So when we work on advocating and standing up and discussing those issues of faith, family, and freedom, it's from that worldview. But we know overall, when people think about Texas, those issues, those values of faith, family, and freedom have been there all along. And so, but we also feel it's very important every day to make sure that it stays that way.
So you're a lobbyist? Would it be you lobby?
I do.
Okay.
I'm a
lobbyist.
lawyer, but I do lobby. That's part of some of the things that I do.
A lawyer and a lobbyist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mercy.
Dangerous.
But you're great at it. Oh, all right.
I try to look out for the Lord's values there, but yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. So you, particularly the Texas legislature, you lobby certain politicians or whatever it is to make sure they're inclusive of the values of Texas and faith values. That's right. Is that too simplistic?
No, that's a great way to state it. And I will work on some court cases. So we like to say that our work is in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media.
Got it.
But a big percentage, probably the largest percentage of the work that we do in the state of Texas is what happens at our state legislature. Now, some of those issues and values and that we'll stand up for or conflicts or discussions that we'll be involved in can play out in the school district level or the county level, city of Austin, those type of things, defending churches. A lot of things that relate to that can happen at the local level. But a lot of our work, because of the impact that the state and our state laws can have, revolves around what happens at our Texas Capitol.
Well, we need people like you. We do. Some years ago, there was a city where the mayor of that city, big city, said, if you're a preacher, clergy, you send your sermons to me on Friday so my office can look at your sermon.
Right.
And I had a lot of people, pastor friends in that city. I said, are you going to do that? And they said, absolutely not. And so if I didn't tell you the city, you might be thinking, New York or California or some of those Massachusetts, New England type places. Houston, Texas. The mayor of Houston, Texas was asking the pastors to send their sermons in. And that's when you knew that's a bridge too far. Something is wrong there. And that mayor's gone.
Yes.
Thanks to you, probably.
Well,
your help.
I born and raised in Houston.
Really?
So very well aware of that situation, circumstance, and conflict and drama, if you will, play out. And, Texas Values had just started a year before that.
Really?
Now, I had been working as a lawyer for a gentleman named Kelly Shackelford, who runs a really great group called First Liberty Institute, and they just work on court cases related to protecting pastors and churches and religious freedom. And so Kelly, you need to blame him. It was his idea. You should go to Austin and make sure that, someone is around that can be involved in these issues if they need someone, and we saw, look, the culture started to change. People started to push back on things that related to, the marriage issue and many issues from that point. Right. And so Kelly was right, though. They realized what was coming around the corner. But as I was really getting established, there was a need to have organizations and individuals who would help bridge that divide between church and the state, but in the right way, in a respectful way, right? And so when that issue happened in the city of Houston, it was ground zero for all the things that we care about, not only as Texans, but as Americans. And you had people who maybe they didn't agree or they weren't Christian, if you will, but they thought constitutionally, wait a minute, this is a little too much.
Yeah.
And it was a power play by the mayor of Houston. Anise Parker was her name. And it's one thing if they said, we would love to read your sermons.
Yeah, it'll help us.
That's right. But it came with a subpoena, which, even though this doesn't happen very often, a consequence of not following a subpoena is you can end up in jail.
I know.
So it was a pretty serious deal.
It was serious.
And
were they going after hate speech?
So,
what they considered hate speech?
So a lot of people may remember the city had passed an ordinance, and this ties into some work I'm doing right now. The city had an ordinance that said not only in government buildings, but even private buildings, private businesses, you have to allow men into the women's bathroom if that's where they want to go. Whether they call themselves transgender or whatever, you have to step back and let whoever wants to go in there, right? And so there was a lot of pushback from the left and the right. It wasn't just a Republican versus Democrat. And the faith community was huge because, it was going to impact churches.
Of course. But
the churches said, we just want to talk about it. People like Steve Riggle, my good friend Pastor Dave Welch, who passed away recently, and just a lot of, Tony Perkins got involved in this issue. As a matter of fact, I saw Tony about a month ago. He was on my podcast for the first time, and he came down to Houston. It was such a big deal. But the pastors just said, look, we will give you our sermons if you want to hear them, but not under threat of government pressure or consequence. But it revolved around the city saying, we're going to have this new ordinance, and this is how we're going to do it. And people saying, we don't agree with it, so we're talking about it. Well, it didn't stop there. And you probably know Pastor Greg Mott at Houston's First Baptist. They did a big event there. Senator Ted Cruz was there. I was on stage. I was just in the crowd, but Senator Cruz was up front. And they said, we're not going to let this stand. And there was a lawsuit filed and all this stuff. But then there was a ballot initiative where the people of Houston got to vote and decide how they wanted this to turn out, which, you don't see very often, particularly a city as large as Houston, the effort it takes just to get on the ballot, lawsuits, anyway. So the vote comes in, and I think that was 2015, and it was not just the local people, but Obama got involved, President Obama got involved. I think Hillary Clinton was This was right before the 2016 election, so she came down there. It was like national story. It was just amazing the attention that it drew. But the voters ended up voting 61-39 to vote down that ordinance.
Oh, good.
And reject it and push it down. And then, but it allowed for a lot of pastors and people of faith that maybe sometimes have different political opinions to come together on the Word of God and the Constitution. It was special.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your work on that.
Yeah.
The Texas legislature, even as we're sitting here, this is 2025 if you're watching this right now, but if you're watching it later, this is old news. But we have, they called a special session.
Yes.
Our governor did, Governor Abbott. And 45 Democrats absconded, left town, went to Chicago and other places.
Yeah.
Is it 45?
That's right, yeah.
So that they can't make quorum to pass legislation.
Yes.
Is that the gist of it?
That's correct. There's 150 Texas House members, and you have to have 2/3 of them on the floor to do business. That would be 100. The Republicans don't, well, they're a little more than 10 votes short of having those 100 on their own, so they got to have some Democrats show up. Now, typically when they vote on things, they just need a simple majority, 76. But in order to do anything official, they've got to have some of those Democrats. And there's been some contentious issues.
Yeah.
The governor has said, Texas, our legislature meets every 2 years, every other year. So we have a regular session that's for 140 days, January through May. That's been completed. And so you'll see sometimes the governor will call a special session, which can be, usually it's 30 days, that's the most. And he can say, I want y'all to handle these certain issues. One of those issues is congressional redistricting.
Right.
The Trump administration and others have felt like that the districts aren't fairly represented because, you got people move, all this kind of stuff. So this is something that the legislature does.
Yeah.
And there are other issues that have come up as well, but this one has
That's
been
the
one
most contentious.
that the Democrats have said.
They're trying to pick up
We're gonna
5
leave.
seats, 5 extra seats. Okay. By
4 or 5,
redistricting.
that's
Yeah.
right. Which is not uncommon.
Yeah, but what will happen with the Democrat politicians that left when they come back? He'll just call another special session, right? Will they leave again?
That's correct. and Randy, I'll tell you, he's already said that.
Yeah,
so,
he said it.
Whenever this airs, we might be in another special session because there's no limit.
I know.
The governor can call as many as one, and I think there's been. I know I've worked in a couple of times where there were 3 special sessions. Maybe there have been 4 or 5. I mean, so you see that sometimes. That is an exclusive power of the governor in Texas, and Governor Abbott's been real strong in saying whatever I have to do. But yeah, so where we are now, there's been legal actions. Our Attorney General Ken Paxton has said he's going to do things. Senator John Cornyn, a whole host of elected officials, and the governor, the Speaker of the House. There's a lot of legal things going on. I've never seen it get to this point, though. And I've been doing work at the state legislature 20 years, since 2005. And I've seen other special sessions. I've seen where the Democrats have left and gone to other states. And people have threatened, but there's never really think. I think this is a little bit more serious.
Okay.
And I think we're going to see something different happen. We're going to see a precedent that's going to be established that should mean, whether it's one or the other, it's typically been the Democrats recently, you're not going to see the minority party leave to sort of hold up business. But it's sort of, we're in almost uncharted water here.
I know.
Right?
Really, it's riveting.
So it's fascinating.
It really is riveting.
But there, look, I mean, and in the balance of this, you've got flooding relief issues from the Hill Country.
Man.
The country, people throughout the country, if not, many people in other parts of the world know what happened in the Hill Country. That flooding relief issue hasn't been handled. There's issues that we're working on. Speaking of what happened in Houston, forcing businesses to allow men and women's bathrooms and all that stuff, we're working on a state law that says that the government cannot allow men into the women's bathroom, showers, and locker room. That's a piece of legislation the governor said we need to get done because it's been more of a concern. There's a pro-life issue. There's several things, but that congressional redistricting has been the big one. And my opinion, a big part of it is we have seen political shifts even in Texas, even though Democrats have not won a statewide office in Texas since 1994, Governor Ann Richards. Even some areas like South Texas that have always been Democrat. Webb County, hasn't voted Republican in over 100 years, and they did this last year for President Trump. So Democrats are starting to get also nervous that they're losing, even in some of those parts of the state, they're losing their grip on some of that power.
It's fascinating times.
There's
a lot
of stuff.
In this past legislation session here in Texas, they passed a number of things.
Yep.
10 Commandments have to be displayed now in the classroom.
Yes.
School's about to start. I think it's, help me understand this. The parents or somebody has to provide it. They can't go buy it.
Yes.
But they have to put them up if I, the parent, says, here's a plaque.
Yes.
Is that the way it works?
It could work that way. The main part of the law is that the government is not required to purchase the 10 Commandments. Not that they cost that much. As a matter of fact, we're one of the state organizations that's part of this coalition of folks with David Barton and other people that you may know, that the poster's $1. I mean, it's not really that expensive, but that gets us into a little bit stronger legal position that we're not using government money to pay for these posters. And so there's a lot going on, organizing, fundraising, and so on, say, don't worry about it. We'll raise the money. We'll pay for it. So, yes, it could turn out that way to where you have parents in the area that go to the superintendent and say, I've brought these 10 posters for you. I'd be happy to help you hang them up. But I will tell you, it's, many years before, the early 1900s. Remember those years? No, but...
I was a senior in high school.
Way back. It used to be pretty common that you'd see 10 Commandments hanging in public school classrooms. There was a court case, though, in 1980 that was based on a court case from the 1970s that created this legal standard that said you can't do those things anymore, just to kind of shortcut it for people.
Yeah.
Stone v. Graham was the case in 1980. Lemon versus Kirchman was the court case in the early 70s. Well, Coach Joe Kennedy, who was a football coach, won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court 3 years ago, represented by my good friend Kelly Shackelford, my former boss and Texas Values board member, and that restored that standard back to say the knee-jerk reaction in these circumstances can't be you don't get to have religious freedom or these religious symbols have to come down, all that kind of stuff. So since we've gone back to that standard, we're now in a stronger legal position to say those 10 Commandment posters that were there before or in some version, now they can go back up. And I'll tell you, we've tried to do the math because the law says these posters should be, are required to be in every classroom, not every school, like one near the gym, in every classroom. I mean, we think that there could be 200, if not 300,000 public school classrooms in the state of Texas.
My goodness.
That's a lot of ground to cover. That's a lot of 10 Commandments. That's a lot of, Moses, history, all this good stuff. But we're excited about it.
What is it about the 10 Commandments that is so... the bedrock for faith, for morality, for what is it that the governor and the legislation wanted to accomplish there? I know it's more than just you can't keep values and faith out of the classroom because they're putting up everything else in the classroom.
Right.
So what is it that we're wanting to accomplish? And with just displaying the 10 Commandments, how does that help anything? Shouldn't you be teaching on it or referring to it or?
Yep. You very well prepared, Randy.
No, I'm not prepared. I'm just
No, these are
curious.
perfect because, and here's why I say that. We already have rules and laws in place that say that the schools should be teaching about Moses, about the 10 Commandments, about the history of the founding in our country and those connection points, right? So and they'll teach about other religions and so on and have some, diversity to it, if you will. But this is a little bit different when you talk about Moses and the 10 Commandments. So it's not as if they're not being exposed to those things already, but it's for historical purposes. When you think about the founding of our country, right? You think about the laws and policies that the Constitution is based on, the Declaration of Independence. There is no doubt our good friend David Barton and others have pieced these things together to make it clear the founders used the 10 Commandments and the Bible, but certainly the 10 Commandments as a source for those early documents, as a source, a blueprint for our government, and in many ways our culture and society. we see places like the U.S. Supreme Court where the Ten Commandments or a depiction of it are there. They're in parts of the doors, and there's a frieze, an artistic depiction of this behind the where the judges of the U.S. Supreme Court sit. So, and there's many other examples of this. We've got a Ten Commandments monument on the Capitol grounds. Governor Greg Abbott argued that case at the U.S. Supreme Court successfully in the early 2000s. But for a while, as you were sort of maybe alluding to, a lot's been of these type of historical things and representations of our Christian connections have been pushed out of the classroom. People have been convinced you can't do this. Separation of church and state, all these different things that people will bring up over time. And so a lot of that's been moved to the side in place of, who knows what ideology now in the classroom, right? So I said, when we talked about this legislative session that just ended, we called it Back to Basics. Right. And one of those reasons was because we're going back to those basics of, you don't have to believe the Ten Commandments. The law does not require the students to believe it, to endorse it. They don't even have to read it. Okay. It just has to be hanging in the classroom. Now, the hope from that is
that they will read it.
That, sure, we'd love for them to, that we demonstrate this is a relevant and important part of who we are as a people, and the public school classroom is the perfect place for that symbol, that representation to be.
So let's say I'm an atheist and I have an atheist child raised as an atheist. Put my son, daughter in that classroom, there's the Ten Commandments. Do I feel, wait a minute, you're pushing this on my child. Yeah. How do you talk through that?
No, I think that's great. And, I've been having this conversation with a lot of people. As a matter of fact, it's funny how things happen. We took a family trip to the Palo Duro Canyon. You ever been there near Amarillo? No. They say it's the second largest canyon right under the Grand Canyon. Oh, wow. It's a long way from here. That's probably why you haven't been there. I haven't been there either. And I've wanted to go for a long time. But a beautiful area of Texas. And so I've been wanting to go. We went horseback riding and we did a Jeep tour around the area. But I took my teenage kids who, probably aren't as historically interested in stuff like I am, but, they like to get outdoors anyway. So I was like, we're going on this trip this summer, and so we went and we're in the back of this Jeep. And there's this other family across from me, right? And they're just talking, small talk. Hey, what do you do? What do you do? And, oh, I'm a teacher. And they go, oh, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. Oh, what kind of, I do some work at the Capitol. Oh, have you heard about that law, the Ten Commandments law? And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I have. And so, they were like, well, how do you know so much? I was like, well, I helped write the laws. I'm just being honest. Okay? Yeah. But we had a nice conversation about it. And I'm that guy a lot of times. Here's how it plays out, right? I think one way to approach it is it's a great learning opportunity for students. If they're atheist or they have different beliefs, to be reminded. And maybe they don't even know the way things have gone in culture these days. They may have never heard, or they've been convinced that the Ten Commandments, Moses, all these things have nothing to do with the United States and America's founding. And in many ways, who we still are now as a people. And so a great learning opportunity. They don't even have to believe it. They may disagree with it. I don't believe that. I don't think that that's connected. Okay, that's fine. You have a right to believe that or disagree. But a lot of other people believe that it is true. And so if you're going to learn an accurate depiction and you're going to have a handle on America's founding and history, this allows you to see that and to know that. And look, you're going to have people that, we know how different parts, even in Texas, you have people now where there are a lot of different faith backgrounds, that are not Christian. And this came up in the testimony. Well, why can't we hang up, this religion, that religion? Well, because those religions do not have a connection to the founding of America, and it's not in any way to try to push anyone down or anything. It's just to have an accurate depiction of who we are or where we came from. And there are a lot of other religions that acknowledge the significance of Moses and the Ten Commandments. You've probably heard this phrase before. People say, you can't legislate morality. Well, sure you can. Now people may not decide to follow the law and it may not impact but it's not true that you can. You look at some of the Ten Commandments that relate to murder, that relate to adultery, that relate to stealing. these are just morality decisions that we've decided are really important, and so we're going to have laws on those things. But I do think it's an opportunity for a lot of people to maybe have these conversations before that they haven't, and a great learning point. I also think it's a great opportunity for people who are new to the United States, right? To go, okay, now this is where I've decided to live. This is the connection.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
Yeah, without the approach being, that's being disrespectful to other religions. This is who we are.
That's great. Have you ever watched your child struggle with making the right choice? I know I have, and that's one of the reasons I wrote Guppy and the Silvery Hook. It started as a story I used to tell my daughters at bedtime, and now I share it with my grandkids. It's about Guppy, a curious little fish who has to learn the importance of listening, trusting, and making wise choices when temptation comes swimming his way. The story is fun, beautifully illustrated, and your kids will love it. But even more, it opens the door for important conversations between you and your children. Conversations about wisdom, trust, and learning from mistakes. I'd love for you to experience Guppy and the Silvery Hook with your family. You can grab your copy today on Amazon. Start a storytime tradition your kids will remember, and one that points them toward making wise choices for life. What else did you work on? What other legislation has your fingerprint on it that just got completed? What else did you work on?
And I was having a little fun with, I wrote the law. I mean, there was a lot of people that were involved in this process, but our organization, from beginning to the end, A to Z, we're involved in every part of the law process when bills and laws come about, except for we don't sign legislation. That's what the governor does. Greg Abbott does that. And we don't push a button on the House or Senate floor to vote. But everything else you see, coming up with the ideas, putting the words into place, testifying for and against, bringing people like you and pastors up there and say, hey, you should come talk about this issue, those kind of things. When they go to court, we're there. I'm going to be in court on Friday in San Antonio. There's a hearing. Someone has already challenged the Ten Commandments law. They're upset with it. And so we're about all that different process. So there's a lot of legislation that we may not talk about that much, but we've had some interaction with. But there are some that, are higher in importance. And another classroom issue that we worked on was respecting the religious freedom, not only of the students, but employees. So Coach Joe Kennedy, this football coach, he won his case at the U.S. Supreme Court 3 years ago after fighting for 8 or 9 years.
He wanted to pray on the field.
Yeah, on the 50-yard line by himself.
He did pray by himself.
Did not.
And did they fire
kids.
him?
They did. He didn't require any of the kids, but the kids decided on their own, hey, we want to go there where our coach is. And he did all kinds of things to avoid this becoming a big issue. But, a lot of people liked what he was doing. And so they wanted to jump in. At one point, Randy, they told him, go up into the press box at the top of the stadium so nobody can see you.
Well, Lord, if there's any place that needs prayer, it'd be the press box.
Seriously, right? So, so it's great that he won his court case.
Yeah.
But what we see a lot is there is an essential and a valuable step to then having a state law that really mirrors and says, this is what the U.S. Supreme Court said. Now this is also state law. We should follow that. So we worked very heavily on a law that is right there along with that language. And Coach Joe Kennedy came in and testified at the Texas Capitol. We worked with him to kind of get him ready and all that good stuff. But that is important because you know what happened? He wins his case, the U.S. Supreme Court, and there were millions of dollars in attorney's fees that were owed by the government, all this stuff. Anyway, so he tries to go back, take his old position. This is in Washington, state of Washington. And boy, were they hostile to him. He couldn't do it. He was there, a few weeks and just said, forget it. And so even after they won, you will have people say, well, that's not really what the court said. And that was only one circumstance. So you will often see right after a big U.S. Supreme Court case, we'll try to come in with a law. So that's a really important one that, a lot of back to school stuff going on as we're taping this, and a lot of interest. You'll see us messaging on that because we want people to know. We don't want them to wonder, what is the law? And, I'm not sure what to do. That's a lot of times where confusion is created and then lawsuits come up. We're hoping that you don't have to go to court. These issues are really simple. Yeah. School choice is a big issue, right?
That was one that got passed finally.
Yes. For decades. And now it's not implemented until next school year.
Okay.
So they're still working on putting everything together so people know how it works. It's a big program.
So for those that haven't followed this, can you just, in layman's terms, tell us, tell our audience what happened?
Yeah. Well, a lot of states, 39 states, have some type of program where the parents and the student can have an involvement to decide the money that the state uses to educate a kid, if they can have that money go towards a school that is private, that's not a public school or a charter school. Okay. Can even be religious, right? Okay. There was a U.S. Supreme Court case a couple years ago, Carson versus Macon, that sort of reestablished this principle that even school choice programs, if the parents want to go to a school that's religious, as long as they're deciding, right? Because this is where people misinterpret the phrase and concept of separation of church and state. It's really about the state not establishing some national religion or forcing it on you. Yeah. If you decide as an individual that you want to exercise your rights as a parent, that the money that goes towards educating your kid, you want to use it as a religious school, that is completely permissible and acceptable. So, state of Texas, we've tried to do something like that where really the money follows the child, just to sort of shortcut it for you. And so that's what we're doing now in the state of Texas. Now,
thank you.
Does not mean there are 6 million public school students. It is one of the largest rollouts, as they say, the first year that 100,000 students could be a part of that program. There's never been one that started with that big of a number, but that is such a small percentage of the amount of kids. So, there are people out there, and the law's been passed, signed, so it's going to happen. But for many years that have that fear, the public schools are going to shut down, and, all these religious schools are going to pop up and take over. That's not been the history of this. And here's the other thing that's fascinating, Randy, is the amount of population increase of public school students is much higher. It's over 100,000 every year. So it's even higher than the amount of kids that are going to, if they filled all those 100,000 seats and they left public school, there's another 100,000 plus coming the next year.
Oh, wow.
So they're not even keeping pace with that. No. So there's no reason for people to believe that it's going to have some negative impact on public schools. But I understand people say that a lot. We really feel like it's one of those concepts where, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? The public school, you're going to have kids there that want to be there, and that's a great place. And there'll be some healthy competition, maybe, to where the public school knows these kids and families have options. So we're going to make sure that we have a great product. But because there's been so many attacks on our values, I'm glad the 10 Commandments are going to be in the public school classroom. But still, there are challenges to parental rights and things to where families think, you know what, the state's going to spend this money. I'm putting my money into the tax roles here. Why can't I decide for my kid to go to a different school? And so, but it's a big deal.
The rural communities were the ones that were pushing back the most, right? Why is that?
Yeah, I think because they're, some of it is a lot of the public schools are one of the big employers in those areas, right? There's one public school, there's one high school, sort of everybody's life, somewhat revolves around that. And so they feel, maybe a little bit isolated or a little bit vulnerable, and they think, some private school is going to pop up right next door or whatever. But we just haven't seen evidence of that happening. So some of this, and, this is my opinion based on my experience, there are a lot of people that politically are involved in teachers' unions that convince people like that, and I get it, people have got to make their arguments. But so there's a lot of fear without any real basis to it. But I do think it's unique in some of those rural communities where you may not have as many schools, you may not have as many options. And so people think, well, what if all the kids leave our area? And, but again, we're just not seeing evidence. A lot of those rural schools, people are happy there. The kids are happy there.
Good.
So they're not, there's not really a threat that it's going to impact that community in a measurable way.
So if I have a child and I'm zoned to go to an underperforming school, and now I have options.
You do.
I can put my child somewhere else.
That's right.
That is better achieving, to challenge my child for them to get a better education. I think everybody's good with that. The problem is they're leaving the underperforming school. The people that stay are kind of stuck because the school that has a roster for my child, I may be a lucky when my child gets in there, but they're going to fill up, I guess, and then you're kind of landlocked. Is that?
There are options where you can transfer to schools within your district or a neighboring district. You also have charter schools.
Right.
And so, but there are only a limited amount of seats and opportunities to do that. And so I think this creates a great opportunity for people locally in their community to say, you know what, I'm going to participate a little bit more in this process of what's happening in my public school, my school district. I'm going to go to the school board meetings. I'm going to make sure we're electing the right type of people.
Exactly.
Right? Because I think all of us, when we send our kids to school, and I went to public schools even through, undergrad at Texas, law school at University of Houston, the overwhelming majority of kids will go to public schools in K through 12. But wherever we send our kids, we want them to have a great education. We want them to have an environment where they're thriving.
Yep.
And so there's no reason why that shouldn't be possible in our public schools in Texas. But I do think we've gotten to this point, and one of the reasons that school choice passed is because of a lot of the hostility to our values, a lot of the disrespect towards parents, and some of the schools that really are not spending a lot of time focusing on core academics, and they're getting into a lot of political ideologies.
That's always surprising to me. Just teach, educate my child. Why are you veering over into these areas that really aren't your responsibility? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Governor Abbott, the reason why he's governor is me. Did you know that?
I did not.
Okay, well, I'm taking the credit for it.
I want to hear, though.
Okay,
please,
so I've known Governor Abbott. He was Attorney General Abbott.
Yes.
Top attorney for the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And top cop. I had him on, different shows, and I had a radio show I did here in Austin. And he came. He was gracious to come. I interviewed him. Mm-hmm. After the show, I said, General Abbott, someday you're going to be the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
And he said, why would I ever want that job? I said, because you're the man for it. He smiled. He said, well, thank you. Pray for me. I said, I am.
He's done a wonderful job.
And here we are.
Yeah. No, he's done a wonderful job. I hope you say that to me. Not be governor, but like some important position. No.
What about Supreme Court? Texas?
And Governor Abbott was on the Texas Supreme Court before he was Attorney General.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was a district court judge too. Just did a tour of the Texas Supreme Court.
What a brilliant man.
He's really gifted, and you've been around him probably more than most people or, your average person. I've been around him quite a bit myself. And one of the most pleasant people to be around. Kind. And it's a difficult position to be the governor of the state of Texas.
Ooh.
The visibility, the size of the state. We're the 8th largest economy in the world. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the world. Okay, we're bigger than Russia. We're bigger than Canada. I mean, yeah. And so you talk about a big stage. But, I just time and again see him, the way that he acts and treats people is really remarkable, and he is a man of faith. He's not afraid to talk about that.
Love that.
And we see him at the governor's prayer breakfast.
I know it.
But I think he also knows. It's real obvious to him. The Lord has him right where he's supposed to be, and he's been a blessing to the state of Texas. And I have never run for office. I really enjoy the role that I'm in without a lot of government, bureaucracy and so on. But that does give me an opportunity to really see some great leaders.
Yeah. You're in the thick of it. I mean, you're in the weeds. It's the battlefield. They bloody.
Call it the pit, by the way, Randy.
Pit.
When you're outside the House chamber. I don't know if that's it's
the pit with an
term.
S, the pit. Do you have hope for the future?
Well, we were talking about kids earlier, and I have my oldest is just finished his he's about to start his second year in college. And, I tell you, that first one was tough. We were talking about that earlier when they leave. And I'm thinking about, the work that I've done, and my entire, professional life is when he was born. So he's been around all the stuff that I do. And I have this one cool picture. Remember that picture of JFK where JFK Jr. is like under his desk?
Yes, I love that.
So I'm doing an interview kind of like this at my house. I lived in Buda. We're now up northwest part of Austin, but I was south. And it's very rare that the media would interview me at home. Usually you have to go where they want you and all this stuff. But I was doing something with the kids. I was like, I can't leave. I was like, yeah, I guess you could come to the house. And they're like, okay, we'll come there. I'm like, great. So I got this desk in the front room, like the study or whatever, and there's my boy right under my feet. So I got this picture. But so as he's leaving, I'm thinking, surely he's ready, because he's like battle tested and all the stuff that I do or whatever. But I was like, gosh, I'm not sure. Like you have that moment as a dad. You're like, they're driving out the driveway, and you're like, boy, have I done everything I can. And so, I've been really impressed to see how he has, found his own voice and developed his own confidence, apart from me, even though I'm around some of that and I've had some of that influence. The younger generation these days, and particularly the ones that largely share the values you and I share, are so active.
I know.
They're so hungry. There's a zeal there. There's also this, we don't have to wait. And actually, the country probably needs us to step up a little bit more and lead.
Yes.
And so I want to be optimistic. That gives me some excitement and hope. Look, we've seen some big court cases, right? The overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Never in my life thought I would see that in my lifetime.
And so there's some signs that suggest that, this country has a lot of incredible leaders that are, growing up, and they're ready, and they understand that sense of sacrifice and responsibility that, maybe we haven't seen, or, you haven't really had that touch with maybe since World War II, maybe the Vietnam era, whatever, where people realize, there's a little bit of you that you've got to give to make all of this work. And so, but I will tell you, I'm glad to be here, because I think about and I'm in my world, right? And as a matter of fact, a few people have heard me say this, that like my sort of dream, if I ever kind of take off the tie or whatever, is to be like Matthew West or Danny Go. Like, I want to be this Christian, music guy. That's got to be so fun.
Let's be praying about that.
But it's been wonderful to see that area of art. Right? You've been in this field for a long time. You're one of the legends. But you see these younger people. Well, they're a little bit older now, but Matthew West and Danny Goki, incredible musicians and artists, but also allowing their faith and their voice to be a part of the values issues they care about. Matthew West wrote a song about the pro-life issue for Abby Johnson.
Wow.
That was great. I saw him perform that song at the March for Life in DC. He performed at one of our events. And so I see the contemporary Christian, some of it's film, but also music, and it's not always, laced with specific lyrics sometimes, but I see it having such a huge role in our society. And I've always liked Christian music, but I tell you, K-Love, and they used to have Spirit 105.9 here.
Yep.
That's what my kids grew up on.
Right.
And so I really appreciate what you've done for so many years, and the other people that you've brought up through this, since then, because, gosh, do we need some hope and optimism? Do we need those songs that
we do.
Get us going, but make us, think, hey, there's going to be another day. There's going to be a better day, and we're Christians. When we think about the Lord we serve, there's a lot of joy to be had.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the great work you do. How do people get in touch with you, know more about you, your podcast, all that stuff?
So our website, txvalues.org, Texas Values. nonprofit law and policy organization. We're on social media platforms. I have a podcast, real original name, the Texas Values Report.
Yes,
and
brilliant.
we do that once a week. By the way, Backstage, great. That's a good name.
Yeah,
we're kind of like,
Backstage.
I was listening to your more recent one, and you were like, yeah, because, everybody looks good on stage.
On
we talk
stage.
about what we get into
Backstage.
real stuff back here. But we've got supporters in all 254 counties. So we have
great.
a connection with Focus on the Family. You remember that
Oh,
group
yeah.
Dr. James Dobson
Of
started?
course.
So they had this idea, we need to have a group in every state that's focused on the legislature and the culture and some of these things that where our values could come into into play, or people could challenge them or whatever. And so we're that group for the state of Texas. We're called a Family Policy Council.
Good.
So people might be hearing this in another state. There's probably a Family Policy Council in their state that's a part of our network.
Good.
But a lot of work we do after the legislative session is educating people, like you talked about. We were talking about the new laws that are coming up. As we get close to the fall and next March, there is another election cycle that starts, not the presidential, but state level races primarily. And so we'll help educate people on that, on the election process, not just what your rights are, could represent you in a court case. There's a lot of work we do that is, we make an appearance somewhere and they don't even know that we're there on behalf of them as their lawyer, right? It's more of in a private confidential role. There's work that we do where we'll go to the Capitol with someone and we're helping them prepare, or they might do a media interview, a lot of different things, or it might just be an email where they're like, I want to know what the law is. You may remember this. One of the laws that I really love the most, is the Merry Christmas law in the state of Texas.
I remember
this
that.
was one of the first laws that I helped write and pass and create.
You wrote that?
I did. It wasn't just me. I had some help.
Yeah.
But that was my first time where I was sort of in charge of all of it. And I brought some really smart people together, but I did help write it. And this was in 2013. Okay, but there have been some conflicts sometimes still, but for a little while there was a lot of conflicts. Can you have, a Christmas party? Can you have red and green plates? And what about a manger scene? Like all this stuff, right? And there were all these court cases from, and the courts were often ruling in the favor of, yes, these things are okay, unless as long as you're not forcing somebody to believe this is a part of that time period.
Yeah,
it's fine. So we were like, enough. Okay, we got to have a law. We got to stop all the lawsuits. Let's pass a law, because this is what happens. As I mentioned, 254 counties in Texas, 1,200 school districts. You get a lot of opinions. We're not really sure what to do. It's Christmas. Anyway, so that website, when we get to that season, all right, and you want to know, can I do these things? MerryChristmasTexas.com. So a lot of times when we help pass a law, and I can't remember the one that we just put up, as maybe Ashley does, of the website URL for the Texas 10 Commandments law. But you can search Texas 10 Commandments. Do you know what the URL? 10CommandentsTexas.com. So we'll set up a website. These are the bullet points. Here's the FAQs, frequently asked questions. Here's how the law, and here's a little page, one pager that you can download and print.
That's great.
You go to the school and say, well,
Here you go.
People said this is the law. And a lot of times that's enough. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's right. No big deal, right? And so, but it helps empower people throughout the state. So it's not like we have to be everywhere. We can, if we need to, step in. As a matter of fact, we were a part of a court case after the Christmas law was passed, because someone still was convinced, I'm not really sure that's the law. And I said, well, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says it is.
Yeah.
You might want to consult him. We ended up winning that case, thankfully. But we've really focused, even though there's a lot of work representing things and being an advocate, a lot of work we do on just educating people about the process, about the laws, and what their rights are, so they can exercise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my guest on Backstage today. You just do great work.
Yeah.
Thank you for fighting for Texans, and thank you for fighting for faith all over the world.
Well, I will tell you, one of the honors I had too was to be there for the service for your father recently.
Thank you.
And the fact that I met him, like, how am I almost 30 years ago. And even though I was a Christian, I was still trying to be a better Christian then. I would have had no idea that, I would have circled back around and been a part of his life, and had some time to develop a friendship with you. But, you know, it was just sort of a reminder to me that, you know, God's always got his hand on us.
He does. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
Lord bless you.